Well, welcome all to our workshop series. First of all, I want to, our thanks to the Alexis B. Morrow Memorial Fund for underwriting this workshop series, and also our thanks to Godfrey Daniels and the Pennsylvania Partners in the Arts for their continuing support. Dennis is the past artistic director of the Philemon Productions in New Jersey, is part owner and creative consultant for the New Jersey Public Theater in Camford, New Jersey. He has acted, produced, or directed over 70 productions and won the New York Daily News Drama Critic Award, New Jersey edition, for his portrayal of Marat in the play Marat Sade. He was a member of the improv group Improvolution in New York and has studied storytelling with John Flynn of Upright Citizens Brigade, also in New York. He continues to work with improvisational groups as well as the Lehigh Valley Story Slam. He has also appeared in Scranton Story Slam, the Westchester Story Slam, as well as the Story Slam at the Gotham nightclub in New York. He is also a member of the Lehigh Valley Storytelling Guild. I am going to stop with accolades here. There are more. Please welcome Dennis Boyne.
Our usual intimate crowd, I love it. We're going to have a family-type celebration today. I'm going to start off by saying I know all of you are storytellers, and you all know the basic facts. So if I go over certain things and you say, well, I know that already, I will apologize. But it's good to review. Somebody once told me that Story Slam is the karaoke of true storytelling, which I thought was kind of fun, because I don't look at myself as a storyteller. I look at myself as kind of a guy who likes to tell stories, which is a different thing. I'm not a professional. I don't do audience participation. And Story Slams just really kind of fit who I am. My stories in Story Slams are only 5 minutes. And since that my attention span is about 3.5 minutes, it kind of works well with me, you know. I've been doing this for a while. We celebrated our 2nd anniversary in May of Lehigh Valley Story Slam. We got some exciting things that are coming up when we come back in September. We're doing some other activities. There are a couple of things that are happening in Scranton. We're talking about doing story slams. Catherine did a story slam of 2 high schools together competing. And that went very well, and we're going to continue that. Maybe we'll have 3 high schools next time. Who knows? Who knows? We're looking also at doing something new, which is I guess, Catherine's got the fancy name for it. I don't know what it is, but we're going to do a parlor series in the sense that we're going to go, we're going to ask you to come to our houses or our parlor because you might be a little bit intimidated with coming up and trying to tell a story on stage or stuff like that. So we're going to try to make people feel comfortable and do a story slam, which will have about a participation of about 10-15 people in a living room where you can sit and relax and it'd be like swapping story. I'm going to go over a lot of material. I taught this workshop and it's 6 weeks. So, and it worked out very well. There was one problem. I had about 20 people in my class, including my wife, and when I went to do a survey of, you know, did you like the class or whatever, and rate it 1 to 10, I got mostly 9s and 10s, except my wife gave me a 7.5. I'm still mad at that. I don't know why. But so many people came up to me who were very nervous and very shy and said, this has been an outstanding experience for me. I never thought I could get up on stage, and I did, and I loved every minute of it, and I'm never doing it ever again. So I got quite a few folks saying that, so I don't know if I'm teaching this right or whatever. So what I've done is I'm going to break rule number 1 in story slams, that you're not supposed to use notes and props, but in order to do this, I'm going to use notes and maybe a few props here and there. Okay. Any questions so far?
Yes.
Yes.
I've been to your story slam
Yes, I
many
know you
times. And at no time did I ever know the background about you that was just told tonight, and I was very impressed. I wish that had been, shared earlier at the story slam, because like the guys to know about you.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
really, that was great.
You
I
know,
was very impressed.
I have a weird situation. I am a very, very shy person.
Yes.
And a lot of people, getting up here, I'm very good on one-to-one relationships. Well, I can do this forever because this is a one-to-one. There's me, and then there's you guys. But to talk about myself and stuff like that, I am a very shy person. And the funny part about it, and I think my fellow actor back there can say the same thing, actors are shy more than anything else, right? Yep.
Really?
So, what I wanted to go over tonight, and I had put this on the thing, I'm going to talk a little bit about story creation and structure. Not what you learned people have done, but how it applies to telling a story in a story slam format. How to develop a relationship with the audience. I studied under this guy, Michael Flynn, who is pretty well known in New York with the Upright Citizens Brigade, and it was my joy to riff with these guys in an improv. It was on a Tuesday night, but I can say I worked at the Upright Citizens Brigade. But he was brilliant, and I said, I love your class so much I'm going to steal everything I possibly can from you. So he charged me $700 for his class, and I'm giving it to you today for free. He taught about how to develop a relationship with the audience. I'm not going to put you guys through it, but one of the things he did right away was have us just stand there and not say a word and have the audience take a look at you. And it was a weird exercise, but after a while, you started making eye contact. And what you want to do is try to be likable and try to develop a relationship with the audience where all of a sudden, when you tell your stories, when you do your thing, they're with you because you're one of them. It works very well. How to emphasize voice and body. Main thing on voice and body, and I'm sure you all know this. The visual is not only my voice in telling a story or whatever, but how you use your body to amplify or be excited, be sad, be whatever. And when you use your whole body as an instrument, you'd be surprised how much more you can tell within the 5 minutes that you're there. Hi guys. Okay, I gotta start over. I'm just kidding. The other thing that is most important, and I think this is kind of intimidating to people that come to Story Slam, and that is how to use a microphone. As soon as you see this and the lights and things like that, if you're not used to them, or if you don't like them, you don't use it properly. And the microphone is an extension of your story. When I get to that point, I will show you what I'm talking about. You can be intimate. I use references. The reason Frank Sinatra became such a hit was that in the 40s, he learned how to use not only his voice as an instrument, but how to use the microphone to imbue sadness into happiness or joyfulness or whatever. He was very, very intimate with the microphone. Storytellers can do the same thing. And when you use it in that way, your story becomes more exciting. And how to enjoy telling a story and have fun. That's one of the hard things, because some people, I gotta remember, what was it? And I want to make sure, and I'm competing against Chaz tonight. Oh, gee, no. I just want to tell a story and I want to have fun. Let me tell you something. People get so excited when they win the trophy. I pay $15 for the trophy, but they're excited. I was telling Denise today about how important it is because it's neat to have. But that isn't why we do it. In Provolution, or in Whose Line Is It Anyways, they say this is a competition where the points don't matter. To me, the points don't matter. The winners don't matter. It's just, we're just here in a big parlor, swapping stories and having fun. So, do I have any questions? Or we doing well? Okay, I'll keep going here. What is a story slam? Yes.
Could you show us what you mean about the microphone?
Yes, I was going to do that. I can do that now if you wish.
If it's in your program, I can wait.
Yeah, I will get to that. Yeah. I brought my own equipment and I forgot the power cord. So Chaz saved my butt and got the microphone working here. So we're good. We're in good shape. I'm going to do a real quick thing about what is a story slam. A lot of you guys have been there before. But it is a storytelling competition. It's an invitation to share 5 minutes of your life in a room full of people who appreciate a well-told tale. Every slam features a theme, so stories are always fresh and entertaining. The event has a theme and everyone is invited to share a personal story. And each story must be of the storyteller's own construction and copyright laws pertain. So I can't quote the script from Wonder Woman because copyright laws attain and literally work to literary works, so don't use them. We place a dual emphasis on content and performance, encouraging storytellers to focus on what they're saying and how they're saying it. That's the big thing about the judges that Catherine gets from me. They're looking for that. They're looking for content of what they're saying and how they're saying it. It's an exercise in crafting stories with a set time limit, and it's fun. It's great entertainment. Each storyteller gets 5 minutes. We usually give you a minute or two grace period to tell a story. Props and notes are not allowed. Appropriate language and behavior should be used in all stories, please. So don't be coming in and dropping F-bombs. I tell you, it really does. I've been at story slams where they have done stuff like that. And they're not really interesting stories. I mean, once you get beyond the shock value, there's nothing there. So, and tellers perform their work and are judged by the judges on a 0 to 10 scale. I keep dropping those things. They're going to let them stay on the floor. And the highest scoring participant wins the coveted Story Slam Tacky Trophy. So, that's a Story Slam. It's relatively easy. It was created by the organization called The Moth. And The Moth is in New York, and now they're prolific. They're all over the world. But the big thing about The Moth is it was created in the sense that what they're trying to do is develop an atmosphere of people sitting on their porch and telling each other stories. And the porch light attracts moths, and that's where that came from. You know? So, let me give you my Upright Citizens Brigade thing about how to tell a story. And I use this, and it works well. There are 6 points to create a good story slam story. The introduction, The second point is a major dramatic question. Rising action, how many of us have heard that before? A crisis point, a climax, and a falling action. Those are the 6 points in a really, really good storytelling, story slam story. If you have all those, they'll work out well. And if you don't mind, I'm going to try to tell a short story. I know some of you have heard it before, but it will explain what I'm talking about with these points. And the story is that, perception and understanding can always be confusing. And I get a kick out of it because I was down here in South Bethlehem. This is where the story happened. I was on the board of WDIY, which is right down on the road on Broadway. And I was going to go to a board meeting, and I looked in my briefcase, I didn't have my pen. And I can't tell you how nuts I go when I don't have my pen, I don't want to borrow a pen because somebody usually gives me their mop black pen, and it's not, I just don't like borrowing pen. But right across from this place is a CVS pharmacy. So I walked in the CVS pharmacy, and it's a weird time. It's like 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, nobody's there. And I'm looking for pens in the pharmacy. I couldn't find them. And the clerk was behind the counter on her cell phone talking to somebody. And she was irritated that I bothered her. She comes up and she says, "Yes, can I help you?" And I said, "Yes, I'm looking for a pen." And she said, "Aisle 7 on the right-hand side." I said, "Thank you." And I went to aisle 7 on the right-hand side, and I couldn't find the pen. So I thought, well, maybe she meant aisle 6 on the right-hand side. And so I went to aisle 6, I went to aisle 5. I couldn't find it, so I'm getting frustrated. So I go back up to the counter, and she's still on the phone, and she's looking at me. Yes, what can I tell you? I said, I can't, you're going to have to help me. I cannot find the pens. And she says on the phone, "I'm going to have to call you back." And she hangs up. She says, "Follow me." She goes down to aisle 7, midway through, and she pulls out a box of Depends and hands them to me. And says, "You take an extra large, don't you?"
Oh, thanks.
And I said to myself, "Thank you very much." And I just walked out, and I went to the meeting, and I borrowed a pen. So that's my story. Now, let's talk about what I just said. I started with perception and understanding can be challenging. That was the introduction. And I hate to borrow pens. That's a major dramatic question. I had a few minutes to decide. I can't find the pen. She said aisle 7, the right-hand side. So sure enough, I can't find the pens, and maybe aisle 6. That's the rising action. It's not an aisle 7. It's an aisle 6 or aisle 5. Okay. So I went back and said, "You're going to have to show me." Well, that's the crisis point. I've had it. This is the crisis. You're going to have to show me. So she brings me to aisle 7, and she gives a box of the pens. She says, "You're going to need a large size." Well, that's the climax of the story. So I went to my meeting and borrowed a pen. That's the falling action. See how that works?
Yeah.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, it's very nice.
Now let me tell you something about spontaneity. I don't think anybody should memorize a story when you're doing this, for a couple of reasons. One is you memorize it, you miss one thing, and now you're screwed, glued, and tattooed. I mean, you just have no place to go and you don't know what you're doing. So I don't suggest that. But you should memorize the points. And if you use that 6th thing, do I have a climax? Do I have where I'm going? It's always nice to know the end. If you know the end, you will get there. And there's some things that might happen while you're doing this that will distract you. You go over 5 minutes, the bell rings. I can't tell you how many people get shaken when they hear that bell. It's a bell, you know? Don't worry about it. So that's one thing. The other thing is, if you've got a funny line, or if you think you're going to be funny, don't go for it. You should not have a memorized joke or line. I have done that in the past. I told a story one time about flying out of the Wilkes-Barre-Scranton Airport. And it's a really weird airport because it's on a plateau. So when you go off the runway, there's a 350-foot drop. So you're not flying, you're flying, you know. So I had this great line. The airport's called a Volca. So I said, that's an Indian word for aircraft carrier. And I thought that was hysterical. Nobody laughed. You got to pick up real quick. Oh, geez, the audience isn't with me. And that'll throw you out. So don't go for laugh lines. If you think something funny, just say it. And if it doesn't, you know, nobody laughs, that's okay. Any questions on that? Yes.
No, it's just, I really liked the points that you broke down and how you broke. Is it possible to get maybe at the end an email? Because that first part about asking the question, I never looked at it that way. And that's like a real insight, and I'd really like to mull it over.
Sure.
Okay.
I tell you what, if I, you know, maybe we can start a list with emails and whatever, and I'll send this.
Oh,
to you.
okay. That'd be great.
Okay. I should have thought of the sign-up list. All right. So let's talk about what not to do in a story. Keep your head up and make contact with the audience. Karen Maurer had a thing with little kids doing stories, and my grandson was involved, and his friend was in it. They were petrified. I was here at Godfrey's. They were petrified, and I've got a tape of it. Were you involved in that? The Karen Maurer thing?
Oh, yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Christopher, my grandson's friend, had this wonderful story about wrestling. Well, he stood there like this. I wrestle with my father, and I really like it, and I'm thinking, boy, this kid reflects everything you shouldn't do. And we've all done that, you know, we've all looked down. We all trailed off our voices where people can't hear you. We've all done that, so don't do that. Watch your ums and your nos. Usually people that are not prepared, you know, I was talking, you know, the other day, you know, and so watch your ums and your nos. Watch your volume. This is one of my problems. I do very well, and then all of a sudden I drift off. I drift off there, you know, and the next thing you know, people are going, huh? So that's why I love the microphone. And maintain your energy. There's a lot of people that get tired or show it, you know. I did a story circle, or story cabaret. And I was one of the featured speakers, which is a half an hour. And I was sick as a dog. I was absolutely sick, but I wanted to do this. I did it by sitting on a bar stool, and Mary afterwards, I said, you want to critique me? She says, where's your energy? And I said, I'm lucky I'm keeping my lunch down, but there was no energy in it, so therefore the audience was bored. So if you don't feel well, be happy, fake it. So, and the other thing that's most important that I love about Story Slam is have fun. Just have fun, you know? Having fun is why I do this. Sometimes we've had Story Slams where the audience hasn't been as much as I wanted, and you know, I've got this and that, and I always worry about storytelling. And what keeps me going, he said, everybody comes up to me and says, God, I had a good time. That's why I do this. And that's why I want you guys to come, because I want to share the good times with you. Okay? That follows? All right. So then I wanted to talk about the proper use of the microphone. Okay? This thing is not a scary thing. This is a microphone. And I've seen people get up. They don't know anything about a microphone or whatever. I've seen short people get up and don't adjust it. And they're up like this, you know, and you can't hear them. Or it's too far down and whatever. I usually talk to my mistress of ceremonies and ask her to adjust the microphone for anybody that we have. Is this working? No. Okay. Kind of vaguely. Hello, testing. Testing. Okay, good. The reason that the microphone is so important to me is that I can imbue any type of feelings I have. Now I don't have to yell. Now I don't have to project. I had a very, very sad thing happen to me yesterday. I had a very, very sad thing happen to me yesterday. Did you get my point?
Yeah.
You feel the sadness over here. You know the guy's sad, but what the heck is he talking about? You know? So that's what the microphone is for. And you can use it a lot of ways. I see a lot of people all of a sudden become lounge singers. And they'll take it out, you know, and no, the time has come. Well, no. Now you've lost one of your instruments, and that's your whole body. Some people are very good at it. I'm not. You know, so I like to stand, and I can do an awful lot with that. Do you see what I mean? I've got my arms, I've got my hands, you know, I've got all of that. And that is what the microphone does. I still have a lot of problems up at the Story Slam that people will get so much into a story that they'll be talking. And then the two guys, and they just walk away, and you're going, you know, and they do that to me when I'm taking a video also. And then I'm trying to move the thing. I think that's me. Okay, go, stop. Okay. Okay, so, I was talking about the microphone. Pardon me?
The video that they're
Oh,
watching.
the video. And the video, when people start walking around, it's just so hard to do it. Because like these videos, things in place, and if somebody walks around, they're going to be out of the thing. So those are the things that I'm looking at. And I want to tell you the other thing about story. Does everybody know who the Rat Pack is? Because I got my young friend over here. The Rat, you know, Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis, not Jerry Lewis, Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, all of those
Sammy
folks.
Davis Jr.
Sammy Davis Jr.
Joey Bishop.
Joey Bishop. They would go to Las Vegas. They were tremendously funny. They'd get up on stage. They'd say whatever they want. They're really laughing. They're really funny. I found out something very interesting. That whole thing was scripted. All the notes, all the joys, all the things was scripted. And they worked on it. So when they would come up, you know, you'd think, wow, these guys are so talented. They can just come up with these funny things right away. This is what I suggest you do with stories. Write it down. Look at it. Don't memorize it, but write your story down first. There is a website called speechinminutes.com. And speechinminutes.com is that if you go in Word, it'll tell you how many words you have. You put the words in, it'll tell you how many minutes. I can't tell you how close that is I'm going to get rid of the mic now. I can't tell you how close that is to how many minutes it is. So when you write your story, do your word count, go to speech in minutes. 650 words is 5 minutes, supposedly. You go over, you go under, you go whatever. And write it, and then take a look at it. Then when you get up there, don't bring notes, don't memorize your story. Just tell me what it is. And always keep your story familiar with who you are and what you do. You know, that's another thing that's really important. Like if I talk to you about the day I was going to be a jockey. Well, no, I'm not a jockey. You know, what you have to do is write who you are and what you're doing. I find so many things so weird. I always have a million stories. You know, the thing that is important to me is that Story Slam and what we all do is so important now because we need threads of commonality and ways of meeting people on a different level because this country is so polarized now. The thing that amazes me in Story Slams is I'll have a guy get up who's 70 years old, and right after that I'll have a guy that gets up who's 18. And they're both telling stories within the theme that they have something in common with each other. It transcends sex, it transcends ethnicity, if that's the word, I said that right, and it transcends age. And it is a common value. I had a meeting yesterday with a marketing and brand expert in person, and she said, after looking at your website and what you're doing, this is more than just a Story Slam competition. This really is a passion that's really needed other places and other things. And that's what we're trying to do here, is that the Story Slam is great, but we're trying to communicate with each other. And a lot of that communication stuff is gone. They used to do it in churches. Churches don't do that anymore. There isn't a lot of places where you can just swap and tell me what's new or what's going on. Tell me about your mother. Tell me about your father. Tell me about one of the silly things you did. And you start, you know, you jump right in and you can figure out a story very easily because you're the expert. You are the person that knows the story. You know it better than anybody else in the room, and it's probably worth telling. Our business card says, everyone has a story, and I swear to you, everybody has a story. And a good story, you know. And I've had surprising stories. I had an 80-year-old woman one time get up and talk about the first time she smoked dope. 80 years old. And she was cool. She knew what she was doing, and she was saying, oh, it's great, I love it, and all that. But I find these things interesting. I found a woman whose son wanted to treat her to a Michael Bublé concert. You know who Michael Bublé is? He's a singer, he's really great. And she was upset because she thought her son was taking her to a bubble show. And that was the first time she was up, and her story was beautiful. So that's all I got. Does anybody have any questions? Yes?
I need a little clarification on the first two of the 6 points.
Okay.
So on the, and I'm trying to relate it back to your story. The introduction, is that kind of a mini recap of what you're going to talk about? And then the question is not a literal question that I could tell. Could you just kind of clarify that?
Sure. It doesn't necessarily have to be the whole story. You know. Right now I'm going to tell you a story about buying a pen, and no, that's not an introduction.
Okay.
I once told a story in Lancaster about good vibrations, and I had all this stuff about my wife and me and all that other stuff, but I started off the story by telling everybody I had a warped mind.
Okay.
You know, and actually I used that at the last one. We had our theme was the ties that bind. And my warped mind immediately thought about all the neckties I used to wear. Not, you know, so, but that's the introduction. Does that answer? And what was the second thing?
And what do you mean by a question? A dramatic question? Where you're not asking a question
No.
in your talk, but
Usually stories have got a path that you're going to, or is, you know, the tie, all right, I guess this thing, the ties that bind. What's the major dramatic question on that? Well, I talked about how I had learned to tie a Windsor knot or a tie. That's a question.
okay.
What's the thing with it? Well, you know, how can you do 5 minutes on ties? Well, they did, you know, and the question was, what's the story about neckties and, you know, to me, or whatever. Does that answer?
I think it's clear. Yes.
Did I give you enough microphone, or?
It's a little far away, but yeah.
Okay,
I have a
yes.
question. When first time I attended, I had the impression the story had to be a personal, true story.
They all have to, I say true as you remember it. Because I got tired of telling true stories and my wife saying, I don't remember that happening. So now I put in true as you remember it. So.
Yes.
The other question was, I had an impression, if I only went to 3, that impressions are not a good idea. Doing impressions. I didn't see any, I didn't hear there was a rule about it, but it seemed like it's not a good idea.
There's not a rule about it, and it depends on what you're talking about. You know, I don't think I've seen a lot of people do impressions. But they might say, my mother said, well, I can't stand that. Well, that's an impression, you know, or whatever. But I don't make a big deal out of it. You know, I'm not going to do Jerry Lewis or Donald Trump or whatever. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I would think that it would depend upon the person's style. If some people convey a conversation that way, you know, with sort of like an impression of the person that they're conversing with as they're telling the story.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, it's style.
the most powerful person in a story slam is the person telling the story, because you have control over everything, over your body, over your inflections, over what you want to say. And that's kind of fun. And the other thing that I find really interesting is that the audience are mirroring what you're saying. Like if you're talking about the time you did 80 miles an hour, I'm thinking, yeah, I remember the time I did 80 miles an hour. You know, years ago in corporate, there used to be a big thing, I think it's still around, the Dale Carnegie course.
Yeah.
And the Dale Carnegie course was, you got up and you told a 5-minute speech, they call it, not a story, a speech. And you're supposed to think of what you're going to talk about, and they had a theme, it was kind of like Story Slam or whatever. And you're supposed to go home and do your homework and think about it. Nobody did their homework. You know? And they would call out the first one, and it was a very nice setting because it was all positive thinking. So you're not going to have a person in the audience say that stinks, you know. But what happens is you get up, you tell a story. I'll never forget the time I rode the bicycle to work. Well, the next 5 or 6 people, I'll never forget the time I got my first bicycle. I'll never forget the time my husband and I did a bicycle. Because you just stole from the first one, you know. But one time there was a very sad man in the class. We didn't know this before, and he was really enjoying the Dale Carnegie course. And at one point, and I was a graduate assistant, so I did the timing stuff. I wasn't the participant. And the guy got up and he says, "I'll never forget the time my wife died." And we went, whoa. And it was very poignant and very beautiful. But he was the first guy. And he sat down. The next guy gets up. "I'll never forget the time my uncle died. I'll never forget the time my brother died." It was a death evening about death, dying. Yes, ma'am.
Along that same vein of tough emotions, what's your feeling on the emotion level of the teller? So how sad can a teller get, and how much sadness is too much, or how much emotion is too much, do you think?
That is up to the teller. Could I use an example?
Sure.
I hope I can, because it happened at the inter-school story slam. There was a young person, probably about 14 or whatever, and she was LGBT. And she was really trying to find herself. And she got up and told a story. And it was terribly confusing. But she was from the charter school. And she was very comfortable in telling that story because the charter school has got all showbiz folks and people that understand that are a little more liberal and progressive, and she felt comfortable in sharing that story. And some of the people were going, wow, because she thought she was going to be a boy, and now she was having thoughts. Do you remember that? And she went up. It was beautiful, and it was very poignant. And there were so many people supportive of her. But boy, that was, wow, you know. I don't know, you and I have been doing this for a while. I don't get a lot of that. I get some really weird stuff sometimes, guy talking about taking drugs or sleeping naked or stuff like that.
Now with the topics, how do you find that, because it is such you said it's a connective thread, but how somebody would interpret the word or whatever the theme is can be so vastly different. Have you ever had someone misunderstand or misinterpret a theme and come up and tell something that doesn't seem to be in any way connected to the theme?
Yeah, and we get that. And then the judges will really hit it, because that's one of the things. Did they stay close to the theme, or was it?
So how do you ensure, because sometimes your interpretation, and I'm sure the person who came up with whatever they came up with thought they were following the theme.
Yeah.
So how do you reassure yourself that when you get up that you're going to be close to what other people, should you look at a dictionary different, you know what I mean? What is it that will
really that
assure?
important? I think Catherine and Chris and Marisol and I get together and we figure out the themes for the next thing. And all the themes we do are so open-ended, and they could mean anything. We're going to have a theme on bald men. Well, I can tell a story, but no, we do, our next theme for September is whoops. Whoops. Well, there's a lot of story. We all have whoops moments or whatever, or, I'd hate for a doctor to get up. I'll never forget the time I was operating and I said, whoops. But you can get an awful lot of that, that type of stuff. We try to keep it broad, because ties that bind, we had a lot of beautiful stories of people talking about their spouses or moms or dads or whatever, and I'm talking about neckties. If I was being judged, I don't know. Yeah, probably, because it was the ties that bind. Yes, sir.
I don't know if you remember, my second time was last February 2016, And the theme, it was around Valentine's Day.
Yep.
The theme was loving. I was like 6 or 7, and first one got up, and their dog died on her birthday. The next one got up, I don't know if you remember, it's on 15. Next one got up, their grandmother died Christmas morning. I was like 6 or 7, and it was death. Father went to homecoming at Lehigh, and he had a heart attack in the parking lot. And my opening line was, I got a call from the urologist. In class, and you had half the people were from Lafayette College,
Yeah.
storytelling class.
Yeah.
They didn't know, they were all 19 years old, they didn't know what a neurologist was. So the norm that night was like death and that kind of loving, missing loving.
Yeah.
Mine was loving, but I went in another direction. So it flipped on, it really surprised me.
Yeah. And
I surprised the judges.
yeah, and that's the fun part about it, because you can get a whole different plethora of stories, you know, with, I'm interested to see what's going to happen with wolves, you know, so, do I have any other questions? How are we doing on time? We've got about another 10 minutes, so I can do an exercise.
Tell
If you
another
wish.
story, please.
Pardon
I
me?
have a another story.
Tell another story.
I have a question. How would you tactfully have someone stop their telling when they have really gone over the time limit? Have you had that happen?
Yeah, once or twice, but the longest I ever had was 9 minutes. And if somebody's really on a roll or whatever, I'll let them go. But they're, you know, they're usually flagged by the judges at that point as far as reducing points. When you hear that bell, that's kind of intimidating, you know. I think it was you that said, why don't you have a flashing light? Or no, I like the bell because I'm trying to get you to shut up, you know. Yeah, Chad.
Yeah, more of a comment. One of the things that's always surprised me about the slams is, and I think it's because they're personal stories, the people own the story,
Right.
and it almost naturally falls into a beginning, middle, and end. You know, sometimes that's hard for people to, but when it's their own story, I'm almost surprised how well that flows for amateurs. That just because it's a personal story, it's there for them, and they can tell it. I think it's one of the-
February, we did Story Slam at the Easton Public Market, because the Red Stag was going under construction. The Easton Public Market put a sandwich board out front. A kid walked in. She had to be like 18 years old. Never did anything like this before. Got up and told the story, and she won. She was that good. Because she's talking about herself. And she probably told that story to her girlfriends 20,000 times, and now she's telling us, you know. And yeah, I hear you, but no, these aren't professionals. Hopefully they're people that are having fun. And a professional should have fun with it too. Because, you know, you guys have got to do a lot of children's stuff, audience participation. You know, I hate going to a comedy club and say, so how's everybody doing tonight? Well, it's none of your business how I'm doing. You know, tell jokes. I mean, you're getting paid for that. I paid money to hear, and, you know. Or I was at I went to see the Dixie Chicks. You want a story? I'll tell you about seeing the Dixie Chicks, okay? I love the Dixie. You know who the Dixie Chicks are? There are 3 women who got in trouble, but they are the most brilliant musicians in the world. I just love them. And I'm not even a country music fan. And I wanted to give a present to my 2 sisters, and they were playing in Madison Square Garden. And I got what I thought was really high-priced tickets. But we ended up in the last row in Madison Square Garden. And my sister, who's 78 years old, we found that you could take the freight elevator up, and she found that. So here's all these young people most of the hair was not brown, white, there was purple, streaked, tattoos, all these people, and there's these 4 old farts sitting in the last seats of the thing, So what happened was they didn't sell out, and they had a lot of seats more in front of the balcony. And they said, would you like to move down front? And everybody's moving down front. And I said, no, we're going to stay back here. And there was a reason for that. When you go to a concert, everybody stands and they stay there. I'm too old for that, So everybody's, rocking and doing everything with these people and all that stuff. And here's the thing I was talking about, audience participation. Before the Dixie Chicks, they had a person that said, how is everybody? I said, now I'm being punished? You're going to yell at me? I mean, I haven't had that since the Army, I can't hear you. Well, go away. But the Dixie Chicks, we got to sit and watch them and whatever, and then we took the freight elevator down. Is that a good story? I don't know. It just came out of my head. Anything else?
Yeah, I really would like to have the notes. That you really were very good in notes that you gave.
Okay, if I can get, are you a member of the guild or whatever?
Yes.
And when you get.
Could I send you,
And I'll distribute.
and you distribute them? Okay, good. Yeah, and I will give you the notes.
Really valuous.
By the way, was this good tonight? I said, no,